Hello and welcome everybody to the April 24th edition of the Gateway API meeting. Just a reminder as usual that this is under the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which basically boils down to be nice to one another. So please be nice to one another. We continue to like to get a list of attendees, even if it's a little tedious. If you wouldn't mind putting down your attendance, we're going to start now that we're past KubeCon, experimenting with some more EU-friendly time zones and stuff, and knowing when people show up is helpful to us. So if you would do that, we'd appreciate it. We do have quite a few things on the agenda, but I think the vast majority of it is triage. So this is an open agenda. If you want to put something above triage that you'd like to talk about today, please do feel free to do that anytime. Otherwise, we'll get started with a very Rob-oriented agenda today. I will I'll go ahead and share my screen. I think that should be working.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think I monopolized today's agenda just because I may have been the only one to put things on here, but as always, anyone is welcome to. I'll start off with the 070 release since that is absolutely top of mind. We're trying to get that one out. Did another check-in with Tim and Cal today, and they don't have any major blockers. So there's one last little PR that has a few I think are really tiny fixes. Once that merges, I think we're clear to cut RC1. And I'm not aware of any major changes between RC1 and a final release. So this may be a release we don't even need a second release candidate. We'll see. But yeah, just tiny little changes on this one. Hopefully this is our last big thing between now and an RC.
Awesome. So V070 right around the corner.
And then, yeah, I just wanted to do a KubeCon recap because, there were a lot of really great people there. For those who aren't familiar with KubeCon, they also have a photographer that goes around at most of their events and takes pictures. And there are a few pictures that are evidence that many of us were in the same room together. So just a heads up that if you feel like looking through, that there are pictures of us that may or may not load eventually.
I got to turn on JavaScript and stuff. Sorry, I don't want to do that.
Oh, yeah, no worries, no worries. That's it for that one. Next up, I wanted to highlight the slides that Nick and I shared for Gateway Update. And there were a lot of Gateway talks. Shane and Nick presented Gateway Update to Contrib Summit as well. I don't have those slides in there, but there's some overlap. But lots and lots of interest in Gateway concepts. I'd say most of the Gateway focused talks I went to were largely full. And I think there were something like 8 of them. So I didn't make it to quite all of them, but yeah, lots of interest there. I just wanted to run through some of my highlights. There's this reference grant scratch talk that represents what I thought was a really important opportunity for us. One of my main goals for KubeCon was to try and move this forward. We were able to get a lot of key people all in the same room together and have some discussions. So that meant all Gateway maintainers, in addition to all but one SIG Auth lead and TL were there. So it was, I think everyone but Mike was there from the SIG Auth side. So it was a really great group, and we got to, talk through what the future of reference grant looks like when it gets into SIG Auth. There's some really good ideas here, but the high level idea from SIG Auth is that they want reference grant to not just be something that is so reliant on controller implementation, but to actually also grant access to a controller or something like that. Of course, SIG Auth would be the ones to want to do that. So they have an idea of what exactly that would look like and how it will work. There will be more discussion on this at the SIG Auth meeting on Wednesday. So if anybody feels like showing up to that one, I'd recommend it. There's a lot in here, but just the high level idea that reference grants should grant access to a controller, and the idea of how that would work is an intermediate resource called, again, who knows what the name will be, but we used a placeholder of reference consumer that connects a set of reference grants to a controller. And then all reference grants of that type grant access to that service account or whatever, however that controller is getting access. Yeah, I think this is really powerful, but it's going to take some work. So just kind of a heads up that this is moving forward. SIG Auth is very interested, but realize that it's going to be a slow roll to get anything done here. And if there's anyone out there that has cycles and would like to, is invested in reference grant and also interested in seeing this go upstream, we have no shortage of work here and could appreciate help. Yeah, I don't know. Shane, you were also in most of those, in all of the same conversations. So I don't know if you had a different take.
I think no, same take. I think it's the direction that they're trying to head of, like actually granting RBAC permissions, is very interesting. I think for the uninitiated, it might be good to know that SIG Storage is also involved in this. You'll see them around in this conversation. They are currently using reference grant for, I forgot exactly what it was, but they're bullish about it, and they actually a couple of them showed up at KubeCon, and we talked about it to some extent. So just a heads up that you'll see SIG Storage in the mix of this as well. So there's a lot of eyes on it. Yeah, nothing else really to add there, but definitely if you're interested, now's the time to jump in. If this is something that like interests you and you want to be involved in the implementation stuff, now's the best time to say that.
For context, this feels like it's going to be one of the most foundational shifts that's occurred in Kubernetes authorization since RBAC, since this is really just an extension of that, a way to grant more access. So, if you have opinions and you want to be involved in something like as foundational in Kubernetes, this is one of those rare opportunities that we get. So, yeah, speak now.
They only come up every once in a while.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'll keep on moving. And the other thing that I found really interesting about KubeCon was TV2 Denmark. They presented, I thought, one of my favorite KubeCon talks about gateway implementation. Had a really great demo. I think a really cool concept is as a controller of Gateway API. And that concept is really just allowing templating, enabling templating. So the idea that given these Gateway API values, how do you translate them into other APIs, which basically what all our controllers are doing. But they made that in such a way that it is easy to extend. So in their case, they had a demo where they were using, they were running two gateways in parallel. One, they were using Cross-Plains Provider API to talk to AWS, and then they were using Gateway to talk to Istio. But from their perspective, it was the same config, it was the same everything. They were using Gateway API, and it just worked. I thought it was really neat. I think that the patterns they have in here are really, really cool. They're using the policy attachment API and GEP very well, I think. So it's a good use case if you're looking for examples of policy attachment. They've seemed to use it very well. And then the very last thing, kind of the next link I had here was, I think all of us were really amazed by this. They have a really neat tool that simply converts Gateway API resources and policies of any kind, as long as they have the appropriate labels, into SVG that shows the layout and graph hierarchy of everything. So I think if you scroll down a bit, yeah, that's the kind of output you get. And they use this for the demo. It was live updating. It just seemed like magic. But if you are ever looking for a tool like this, it exists, and I thought it was really cool. Yeah.
Astounding. I mean, the really interesting thing is just the level that they went to, and it's a TV station. And I don't mean that in any other way, except that it's kind of like something you wouldn't normally expect, right? Like they went
Yeah.
above and beyond. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was one of the best examples of really getting and understanding Gateway API, and just yeah, kudos
Yeah,
to
they
them.
get it. I still haven't actually seen the talk.
Yeah,
But
I recommend checking it out. It'll be on YouTube sometime soon, but yeah.
next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Really cool.
All right,
All
and
right.
the very last thing I wanted to highlight from KubeCon was Envoy Gateway. And Arco, you're on this call, so you can probably give more context than I could. But this was my first time realizing that you were using custom route filters, and maybe you're not the only one, but I just thought it was really a good use case of them. So I don't know if anyone from Envoy Gateway wants to explain more, but I just was impressed by this specific extension on top of Gateway API. I'm always interested in seeing different ways to extend Gateway API. I thought this was a particularly clever one.
Yeah, so we released this in February of this year, and at that point we were with link to 060. At that point, direct policy attachment didn't exist. So the natural way to extend authentication was to add a filter. And we also added one for rate limiting, because I think we discussed, and for rate limiting, I think we decided that the persona ties more to an application developer. And so we decided to keep the config closer to the route. And so, yeah, we added 2 customizations. We plan on adding some more in the next release for authorization and more sub-authentication features. With direct policy attachment being created and moved to experimental, I think we need to rediscuss whether some of these need to be moved into a policy attachment or not.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to, also see the pros and cons of using either one. I know that they're definitely getting a little bit closer together in terms of pros and cons. I really like the idea of custom route filters, just because they, it feels like the right place for this kind of configuration. But maybe, yeah, I guess that's kind of hard to quantify. So I'm interested in how you're making decisions as well, of whether it becomes policy attachment or this kind of custom route filter. Yeah, just out of curiosity, anyone else on the call using custom route filters or planning to? I think there's been some high-level discussion about potentially doing that in GK's implementation for something, but yeah, interested as always in how these extension mechanisms are being used. Okay, well, yeah. With that, maybe I'll just keep on running through this. Anyone feel free to interrupt me at any point. But yeah, this one came out of a discussion actually with a customer that really wanted to have redirects drop a trailing slash. And that seemed like an entirely reasonable request, and something that is, as far as I can tell, either impossible or unnecessarily difficult with Gateway API today. The first part of the question is what people are doing with exact matching today. We have, for prefix matching, we've been very clear that a trailing slash is just ignored. Whether or not it exists, it doesn't matter. It's a prefix match. The path match, on the other hand, the exact match, on the other hand, is just we match exactly. Does exactly include a trailing slash? You would think, because we don't say that's what it means, but I don't know. Anyone with visibility into your implementation that knows what how this is being implemented today? It's kind of a open question here.
And if not, I have a sneaking suspicion that like URI RFCs or something like that are going to have something to say on this matter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
So
would be curious if somebody's already trying to, yeah. But I'm thinking there's some RFCs out there that'll probably give us the legend by which to go off of.
yeah,
Yeah, this is kind of there's plenty of precedence for this in the way Squid and Apache dealt with this in the past with how they did prefix matching. Maybe look at those.
what was the first implementation you were talking about?
Squid.
Squid.
so far.
Okay. Yeah. Good idea. And then I guess oh yeah, and thanks for the RFC reference. And then I guess kind of the next natural follow-up to that is the other issue, which is, even if the trailing slash and exact match is meaningful, redirecting to drop a trailing slash is unnecessarily complicated. There's not kind of a way to configure that in any simpler path other than just, per path for exact match. It seems like it'd be nice to provide a simpler method to do this. Don't have any ideas right now, but just want to track this and see what kind of interest there is for this. This is just, again, showing what drop trailing slash could look like if trailing slash was meaningful on exact match. But if it's, either way, we'll need to spend some time thinking about how we want to handle this drop trailing slash redirect.
Roger that. Okay.
Cool.
We are at the end of everything but triage with quite a bit of time left to go. If anybody has any pop-up items or just things that they want to discuss before we move into triage, that would be totally fair. We can give a couple seconds. Otherwise, we're going to go into triage.
For some outstanding PR, should I bump them now that KubeCon's done for a review?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
So please do. I tried to just precede this triage list with items that I haven't seen or haven't taken enough of a look at. But this is entirely meant for anybody to add items to. So this is an incomplete list. I'll say that over KubeCon, the list of things to review grew, and this is there's a lot more I want to look at than is here right now. But at a high level thing, just to again differentiate, trying to make sure that we're triaging things that are between us and GA first, and then as there's time, going through anything outside of that.
I see my pull request, the 1971 on the other list.
Yep.
I'll save my questions till then, I guess.
Okay, cool.
We could even start with it real quick.
Oh, okay.
If you're ready. I mean, if you're not ready.
Yeah, I have a bunch of like new questions.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
So I went ahead and unsuccessfully created a GEP. But so I appreciate the direction. So I went and created this pull request, and I did it as a draft mode because I just thought, well, why not just be careful? So I think the first thing, would you just recommend going for just not a draft mode and just straight into a pull request? Like, what's the point?
When you're actually ready for people to start looking at it, mark it as non-draft. So even if it's still kind of whip, but if you want review, I mean, you can specifically ask for review too. If you want to leave it in draft, but like ask specific people, it's kind of up to you. I don't think there
Okay.
needs to be a hard and a fast rule about when something is a draft. Generally, I'll put something in draft when I don't want it to be reviewed, and then it gets reviewed anyway. So I'm not really sure
Okay,
that it
cool.
matters.
I just noticed there's a drop down for like a less official.
Yeah,
But-
I've made draft PRs where I've put in the PR, please do not review this yet. I'm just using CI and gotten reviews. So in like heading title like stuff. So yeah, it's kind of
Okay.
whatever. So yeah, if you're ready for review, I can personally start giving, like I can jump on this for you and start doing. I'm already a reviewer on there, so I'll get to this.
Sure. The other thing that was kind of like scary looking is the CLA contributor license agreement.
Yeah, I
authorization.
guess we don't think about that too much, but if you have yeah.
Because I mean, I just don't want to get myself into legal issues or something.
Yeah. Do
Yes.
what you need to do. Talk to your company.
So I kind of maybe I'm misreading it, but it says like when you go through the process, it will get sent like the corporate CLA person will get sent an email if it's set up. So does that mean that they'll get it if it's set up, and then if they don't get it, I need to follow up on that? Or
So
Yeah, a little-
usually the way this works is different for every employer. I know in my case, I just have to have my work email associated with my GitHub and with my commits, and the rest just is automatic. But
Okay.
I know it's different depending on your employer, but there is probably some internal guidance for working with this.
right.
And
Yeah,
and
and
I'd check in with
that
that.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm
so-
sorry because I signed this thing like 9 million years ago, so I don't even. But I'm pretty sure on the CNCF Slack there are places where you can get help with this as well with questions and stuff. So not on the Kubernetes Slack, but on the CNCF Slack, I think there's a few channels related to this, and we can help you find them too.
Yeah, I mean, I did add my work email as part of my profile. So I'm like, okay,
Roger.
but
Okay,
Okay.
so I might have misunderstood. What was the big question was whether or not you need to figure out what to tell your company to see if they'll allow you to do it or whatnot.
yeah, or I need to reach out to someone from legal or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just let us know how we can be helpful to you, and like I can help personally. I can help like dig into the CNCF Slack because I'm pretty sure there were channels where like they can give kind of guidance on this sort of thing there.
Okay.
But there's people to reach out to.
Okay. I'll just need to dig some
Yeah.
more.
A little bit digging is going to have to be done. Anything else other than the CLA stuff that you wanted to kind of talk about on this one?
That's it. I mean, as far as the content, I think we tried to follow some guidance that we were given a couple of months ago, where less is more kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. It's very it's nice, and it looks like it doesn't have too much going on. So I think you will not run the risk of this becoming too nested with comments. The less you have, the less comment threads you'll have ultimately. So
Got it. Yeah, I mean, definitely want to fight the urge to try to make it.
Yep.
See more
start with the
than-
what and the why. Let's just get the groundwork going.
Okay.
Don't make it too big. I think that's the way to go.
One thing that I saw in here just at a first glance, I wanted to understand that I think your proposal here would be to add a new kind of route, an egress route, as opposed to using existing route types.
Right. I mean, I guess maybe that's a little too specific, maybe.
It might be jumping in a little bit too far. Yeah, because that even
Okay.
to me feels like, oh no, like there's a lot of implications of adding an egress route. We've held off on doing things like even adding like IP routes in the past because like it breaks some of the. We actually talked about this at KubeCon. Everything thus far when it comes to like routes is effectively just programming rules, like instructions for programming your data plane, your gateway.
Mhm.
Egress route gets outside of that, starts to kind of like jump outside of the box a little bit. So
Is it like too specific? Is this like too boxed in?
maybe we'll,
Make it
don't
more
worry
clear?
about it. Don't fret. We'll give you some comments and stuff like that. We'll kind of
Okay.
I haven't actually personally taken the time to read this and like sit down, but
Oh,
we'll
no
give you
worries.
some thoughtful comments, and we'll kind of try to make sure we're also not blocking you. Like we'll come up with whatever we feel like, is a good way to move forward, but also where the boundaries are, because egress route is definitely going to be, that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah, and
Interesting to say the least.
And just to set expectations, I think almost all of us agree that we want egress to be in scope of this API at some point. But also, so we want to see something like this. At the same time, we are very hyper focused on getting GA out the door. And so, we're doing what we can to try and prioritize things that fall between us and GA, and this is unlikely to be one of those. So this is going to be whatever extra time we have, but it won't be, the same priority as other reviews for us.
Yeah, it's a beeline to GA right now to try to get it in time for KubeCon Chicago, which isn't that far away, as strange as that feels.
Got
But
it.
smaller,
Nice.
more like quick things that can be consumed quicker definitely helps to get a little bit of attention during this time. So
All right. So I guess my personal next step is follow up on the licensing thing, and then yeah, whenever you guys have time, take a look.
yeah, sounds like a plan.
Appreciate the feedback and the help.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right, so we did talk about that one, so I'm gonna just pull it out, I guess that's what we'll do. I opened up the 4 from the path to GA, so we can start on that. Unless anybody else wants to raise one, please do feel free to stop me. Okay, so add validation for gateway spec addresses. I think I just looked at this for a hot second and just put it in triage so we didn't miss it. Current validation server does not have validations for gateway spec addresses, and that is needed. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those quality of life.
Said yes.
Yeah, it's like a quality of life improvement. It's not like a strict requirement, but it sure seems reasonable. Might as well. I mean, it's gonna have to be something that's in webhook validation anyways, but doesn't seem to have any harm.
Rob, do you want to try to line it up with V1?
I mean, if it's not in
See if we can
V1,
get to it.
it's never. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. So
let me think about this for a second, because I guess the question is really just, do we try to put this up for next, or we to put it in the backlog of things that we should try to do for V1 that don't necessarily have to hold up V1? Because we already have a few things in next.
yeah, no strong opinion.
Anybody else have a strong opinion on that? Otherwise, I'm kind of inclined to say V1, and if we can get to it, we get to it. Going once, going twice. Sold
Works
for
for me.
$42 to the man in the orange hat. All right.
I guess sort of related, this came up, I think, I forget, in like the maybe cluster local gateway PR about if addresses are mutable.
Huh. So
I think that would have
what would
an
it
impact
mean?
here.
What would it mean for an address to be, because obviously, you can always add addresses.
Yeah, that would break some
And
things, wouldn't it?
if you added an address, or if
No,
you
just
changed
making the, it occurs to me now in retrospect that there would definitely be implementations of gateway where I would think you would not want immutable addresses. Like, absolutely, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a good reason to make them immutable.
No.
I don't even know how you'd enforce that, because we always want to be able to add new addresses. And
Yes.
yeah,
What's the other issue? Just so I feel like my brain's a little broken, but I'm also jet lagged like you wouldn't believe. What's the what's the other issue you were just referring to that relates to that? What's the number?
In cluster local, there was a discussion of reachability
Oh.
of a gateway should be mutable, and maybe the answer is no. I looked up
Immutable?
for either or. I guess
Okay.
I'm not coming here with opinions. For me, it
Gotcha.
might make sense that it is immutable, and then I was looking at address as sort of a hey, what's the discussion there?
Kind of in the same way that like you don't really normally change your service address once you have
maybe,
it.
yeah. So I guess
trying to
the
find a
reason why I
frame of
bring it up
reference,
is it might make sense as part of adding validation that you maybe there's a test that says you can't modify the address.
but even that, I mean, it feels like you definitely want to be able to support adding addresses indefinitely, and you probably want to be able to support removing addresses.
Yeah.
And so if you can add and probably remove, then you basically can modify. Unless
Yeah, so I don't. Yeah,
Well, maybe take a couple minutes to like think about it, and then maybe either add it if it's very relevant to this issue, add a comment on here. I mean, we're just putting it in the backlog for now, kind of laying out what you're thinking, or another issue if there's something to be discussed there. But I'm having a little bit of trouble with it personally because I can't see not being in a position where you couldn't remove an address that you were no longer going to use for the gateway, like that being a thing. But definitely want to hear you out on it if there's some ways in which this is making sense in
no,
another
I don't really
implementation.
have opinions. It was more just like if there's a precursor to the reachability, mutability, which to me I would say like it doesn't make sense to change the gateway's reachability. But then I was wondering if there was any relation to like changing addresses.
Roger that. Okay, well, yeah, let us know. And then for this one, all right. Sorry, I left my sound on for all that clicking. Apologize. I just realized that.
it's fine.
Click, 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 click. All right. That one's ready to go. Let's go on to the next one, documenting HTTP header modifiers. I didn't see this one yet, I think.
No, this is great. This is Nico filed this. I took a quick glance and it looks great. This is a pretty big gap in our documentation right now. I've added this to my list of things to review, but it would be great if others have some time to help review it. This is huge improvement and definitely something we need pre-GA.
Okay. I'll definitely take a look at that. I hadn't caught it yet, just 3 hours ago. But yeah, that sounds wonderful. It's been a while since we've actually had a big chunk of documentation added, so bravo.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see Nico writing docs for us because he's great. So this should be a good one.
Wunderbar. All right. Ambiguity in whether reference grant is required for same name. Oh yeah, I remember this one. The requirement for reference grant is needed for these is ambiguous. Although it is clear it's cross namespace references require reference grant, it's less clear whether it is required for the same namespace references.
Yeah, so I think any of us can answer this. It's something that we need to clarify in our documentation that it is only required for cross namespace references and is at this point irrelevant for same namespace references. But the SIG auth changes that are coming may change that, but for the purposes of Gateway API, yeah. So this needs someone to respond and say something like that, and then somebody else to actually make the change, or potentially the same person to make the change in API spec.
Okay, I'll leave this tab open. I took it. I'll get it moved forward and get those comments out there.
You're the best.
Conformance. Oh, I worked on this one. Okay, so I think I was expecting to put out a prototype of conformance profiles before KubeCon, but Mattia had requested, basically we had talked and he was interested in helping out with it and helping me particularly to plug it into the implementation he works on. So during KubeCon, he was kind of doing that, and here's the PR. So this I'm not going to really review this since 3 of the commits are mine, but for those who are interested in the conformance profiles, this prototype does ultimately at this point produce a conformance report. Things are still a little rough. There's still a couple things like this one which we got to figure out, but the basics are kind of there. The basic machinery is working. It's all underneath an experimental build tag. So it's literally, not part of the conformance suite yet. You have to opt in with a Go build tag. We would like reviews, obviously, but then the idea is this is just a small chunk to move us a little bit closer. We have like the basic machinery working, like other people to jump in and try their implementation, see if they also can get a report going, and then make the little changes ultimately to just iterate on this prototype as part of the get process until we get to the point where we're like, okay, we have a few implementations kind of liking what we're seeing. Let's talk about moving the get process forward with it, or whatever we end up wanting to do. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I just so this is awesome. But one high level thing, how are we running this? Like I see there's a lot of metadata in here, like organization name and description and whatever. Are those just command line flags?
As of right now, they're
How-
kind of in that space. Yeah, we haven't really
Okay.
100% figured out how to. There's things like even getting the Gateway API version, because we just basically assume that everything's going to be pre-deployed before you run the test suite. It's kind of LOL, so you can't like dynamically really get that right now. So we're thinking about that, and it might end up being that there needs to be flags or maybe a metadata config file that could also be flags or whatever that people need to provide if they want a report. That might be the direction we go. That might just be the direction we
Yeah.
start with the prototype, see how everybody feels about that, and then see if we can come up with some better ideas. But that's kind of where we're at right now, yeah.
I think the way it works in upstream, and someone can correct me on this, but I think the way it works is there, every release, every minor release has a directory. Within that, every implementation that claims conformance has a directory. And then within that, there's a metadata, I think, YAML file, a markdown file that provides, these are the steps we took to run the conformance tests, and then just another file that is the test results. And so maybe that's a rough structure that we could use for this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we weren't really focused on that stuff just yet because the GEP was where we got all these fields exist because they're things that we decided we'd like in the GEP. But at the point we're prototyping, we literally just wanted to get to the point where we were actually able to produce a report. So the details of how we get some of these fields is definitely open, and that sounds fine. And I think it's kind of because this is a prototype, because it is behind the build tag, I think the idea at this point is judge it in the PR review based on what it can do so far, but we'll iterate on these other bits rather than trying to solve them all in one place. And that also opens up the door so that more people can contribute. And like, this is kind of the fun part. So we didn't want to monopolize it. like there's a lot people writing the code is actually the part that a lot of us enjoy. So go ahead, David.
Just a quick question about this. Is it easy to create, for example, a conformance profile downstream? Because one use case I kind of realized is while like downstream key native will probably be wanting our own conformance profile, which might, for example, include core, extended, and we might want to turn on some additional features. That way we can sort of say, hey, if you run this conformance profile, then you know it's going to work well with Knative. Rather, so I'm wondering, is it split up in such a way that it's easy to consume?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, well, the direct answer to whether or not it's easy to do entire profiles by yourself, you can in fact create a profile by your like downstream, but I think in practice that those named profiles will not be recognized as part of like the certification process, right? So you could do it, you get a report that includes your custom one, but the idea, and we need to make sure we're not missing anything here, is that we would have named profiles, like in this case HTTP, which should be pretty universal to everybody. And then you can do what you were saying, where you can say like, we only support specific, when it gets out of core, when you get into extended, we only have like specific features that is represented by the extended section, where you can actually, it'll actually identify the features that you do or do not support from extended. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that capture kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, like I'm not looking to push a conformance profile upstream, just essentially for us to have our own downstream that makes it easier to run a specific set of conformance tests and features.
Yeah. Well, and up to the point where you actually run a profile, which then results in a certificate. And again, this is all prototypical, so definitely want you involved, like, because this is part of the fun of it. But in its current state, if you run a profile, you get a conformance report. You know, you can not use profiles technically, like during a development period, where you just pick the specific tests or specific features that cover a certain number of tests that you want to run. And we recently made the change that all tests have to be associated with features, so that helps with that as well. So if I'm understanding you correctly, yeah, you can totally, before you actually want to submit a conformance report upstream, you can do any combination you want. Like you can do whatever you want to just test things out, try things out. But at the point where you, as it stands right now, again, because this is prototypical and it's all subject for change, where we're headed right now is then you would finally actually want to run the profile at like in its standing state with just the features that you enable or don't enable rather. And then that would give you your final report you actually submit upstream.
Yeah, because I could imagine there might be some experimental features that some implementations support. And it might be a test that's upstream, but that's not broadly enabled. So it'd be good to have like a profile that I can use myself to configure these tests. And I can run all these tests downstream against different implementations. Yeah, cool, great. Thanks.
So yeah, looks like Arco's already taken a look at it. Thank you, Arco. And we'll pull in a few more and kind of keep giving it a go. We don't have to spend too much time on this one though. We're getting close to the end here and we still have a few items we want to look at. So please do check that out. That's 1967. That kind of affects everyone, I think, anybody who's implementing. Yeah. All right, let's start looking at some of the others.
I think one more got added in the path to GA, the 16.
Let's look at that one first then.
Yeah, I snuck that one in.
Sneak attack. All right. Cluster local gateways. Ah, yes. Cluster local gateways. It's been around a while now.
Yes, it has.
Is this just a bump for review?
Pretty much, yeah.
We need to start focusing on getting some of these comment threads resolved.
I've done that. I left some of them open because when there's a question and then I reply, then I also update the gap. So ideally I'd want the author too. Also, I also kind of leave it open. Sorry, it's a fine art because
It
I've
is a
seen what
fine art.
happens is people will come, they will read the comments, but they don't read the gap, or they read the gap and they don't read the comments. So that's why I've been trying to very diligently throw, as I resolve some things, put them into the gap based on the discussion in the comments. But I still like to think it's worth leaving some comments open to reading, so that way so you kind of gain some context, even a bit mixed on that, but I have resolved a bunch. And I think for most of it, like some are just really old and don't apply anymore, so they really should be resolved.
Yeah, you're right that it's a fine art. My default personally and very personally is because 99 out of 100 times the original commenter will not resolve their own comment. Is to, once you are like really sure that you've resolved what they're saying, I will often put a comment that says, I believe I have captured exactly what is needed to resolve your comment. Here's how I did that, links to the commit or whatever. Please unresolve this if that isn't resolved. That's kind of the default, but again, it's a fine art. You don't always do that. And sometimes comments just are too nebulous, but okay.
Yeah, I know. I personally own a lot of the comments that aren't resolved right now. So, you know, I've got a few things ahead of this one in my, in my prioritization right now, but I will try and get back to it this week. If I missed that, don't hesitate to ping me on it.
Yeah, like
I'll try
I
to get
guess
back to this soon. Please do ping me.
yeah, I feel like the comments are resolved. I left just them open, so feel free to
Yep.
take a look.
Roger that. Yeah, and thanks for re-raising it. Please don't ever hesitate to raise a thing when it's been sitting. All right, 1950, the tester interface. I think Mattia was taking a look at this one first, and I hadn't looked at this yet. This will allow users to run conformance tests with custom logging headers and enable emitting important info such as timestamps.
Yeah, this is coming from the GK implementation. It takes a while for a test to run, and it'd be really helpful when we're debugging to actually get some timestamps along with the logs. And Brian looked at a few different alternatives. I think it was John suggested this specific one, just a custom interface. It seems reasonable to me, but I wanted to get some other reviewers to make sure before just going ahead and merging it. I don't have anything against this change, but want to make sure it works for others as well.
Okay. There's a good chance, given that it is already in review, it'll make it into 071. So I've marked it as such. I will review it. Maybe Arco can take a look, and Sanjay might want to take a look. Sound like a plan?
Great.
All right. Get some attention over here. So that's just the issue for that one. All right, cleanup, add string function for round tripper request.
Yeah, this is a bug. It probably I might have maybe should have put this as a GA not blocker, but we have again, when running conformance tests, you're getting a lot of extra noise in there because we're printing out everything. And so Gaurav fixed that with this, just basically removing the certs or truncating them, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I think this is non-controversial. Maybe I should have just approved it myself, but I guess raising it here first if anyone has any reason to hesitate about it.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. I'll take one more look at this after the fact.
Cool. Yeah, if I don't hear anything, I'll just merge it tomorrow, I guess. But it seems very fine.
Let's tag it for V07. Wait. Yeah, right. That one's for,
I mean, this could make it in
Performance,
070 at this point. I mean, it's so tiny, but see.
we'll start there. I'll come back to this one myself. Take a look. All right. Spammy logs.
Oh, that's the same thing.
That's the same thing,
Whoops.
sorry.
I don't know why I put them both in.
My bad. Nope, I did that because I opened the
Okay.
relevant issue.
Yep.
And I might have gotten lost because we just looked at. Did I get to the end of the ones we were looking at? Did I get to the end of them? Are we back?
I
wrapping
think
back
I
around?
think you just didn't open all of them up, maybe.
Okay.
Or I don't know. Looks like Candace has one at the bottom. Maybe we should make sure we get that.
Yeah, let's do that one real quick. Is this the gap? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed this one, but yeah, we absolutely should be pushing this forward. Candace, what's the current state of this? Are there any comments we're hung up on?
I don't think so. I think Nick went back in and addressed a couple of comments that were open. I didn't get any feedback based on some changes that I posted so
Okay.
far, as far as I can tell.
Everyone involved in this, by the way, everyone who's been involved with this review so far was at KubeCon, so there was some busyness. But we can definitely start pinging and getting everybody to take another look. I think there's at least one comment here, which I'm just going to resolve with Howard or John rather. But we can start going like this and be like, hey guys, we're all back from KubeCon, wake up. So yeah, I'll take another look at this one myself, and then I just pinged everybody who was reviewing it to get back to it. Any other specific comments that you want to highlight?
I think it's the real fire is going to be lit once the implementation.
Yes,
Once the implementation text comes in.
accurate.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Before-
don't think, yeah, so far I don't think there's anything really controversial because we just kept coming back and saying this is, we're not talking about implementations at this point. And then, once we are talking about implementations, there's going to be some heat, but would be good to get this put away and
Get started on the heat.
on the heat. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Okay.
All right. Yeah. I just thanks again for adding this. I should have added it myself. This is a pretty high priority gap. And yeah, I'll also try and take another look at it. I'm supportive of it, and we'll try and make sure any last comment threads here that aren't resolved do get resolved ASAP, and we can get this through.
Thank you.
Cool.
Roger that. All right, we have like 1 more minute. What'd you want to say?
1959, that was another conformance test one. I think we skipped just.
Let's do that. And that'll probably be the last one for today.
Oh,
Custom dialer. I feel like I saw this one and said yes to it or something. I feel like, oh, I started looking at it and then didn't get to it because I had a couple of meetings pop up. Okay.
yeah, this
Yeah, I
one
think
looks
this one's non-controversial.
this one looks great to me as well. It's coming from GK side, so I just wanted to wait for someone else to review it before approving. I think there's at least one other LGTM on it.
Roger that.
Cool.
I'll give it a poke before the end of the day here or early tomorrow morning.
Cool.
All right. And I think we're at 59 minutes after the hour, so we should probably just go ahead and wrap up. We got through a lot of triage again for the second meeting in a row. That's this is unusual, which is good. Maybe a good problem to have. Thank you everybody for coming. We have not decided on the EU-friendly times that we're going to do yet, so just those aren't decided yet. We will try to give some headway on those but do be on the lookout because we're going to do some time changing arounds, at least on one meeting upcoming soon. Other than that, we'll see you all next Monday. Have a good one.
You too.
See
Bye-bye.
ya.